I still in the microwave right now?
Now you're about to come out of the microwave.
Oh, so fresh,
There you
so
go.
clean. Look at you. Look at that beard. Your beard actually, like, kind of makes changes the shape of your face because you have like almost like an alien-looking face where it's like in and then out and then back in. But your beard kind of fills in that gap a little bit because because your cheekbones kind of look like they're out a little bit. You got very, defined cheekbones, but then all of a sudden your beard, it fills in that gap, and then all of a sudden you turn to the side a little bit, and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, that hobo beard. It kind of changes things up a little bit.
You like it?
I love it. So, welcome to Conversations. This is Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity. I'm here with Tyler LeFloch. I'm Sean LeFloch. Tyler looks like he's eating food right now. What are you eating there, Tyler?
Some coffee and a little bit of granola.
Coffee and granola. Is that a typical Sunday afternoon treat for Tyler?
Sure, why not?
Sure, why not? What kind of coffee are you going with right now?
I'm going with Pete's dark roast.
Ah, old Pete's.
Good old Pete's.
Now, is that something you brew at home, or is that something that you go out for?
That's a homebrew.
Homebrew Pete's. Did you get the little non-biodegradable things? What are they called? Those K-cups?
No. This is just like a Mr. Coffee pot.
Ah, Mr. Coffee.
Old school.
I heard those K-cups are like terrible for the environment. Supposedly the inventor of it goes, I wish I didn't invent them.
Oh, yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
I remember listening to the podcast, too.
I don't know if it was... We don't fact check here on Conversations, Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity. No fact checking.
It's all fake news anyway.
Exactly. You have your Yellowstone mug there.
I was waiting for you to comment.
Is that... I know. It's a nice conversation starter. I was resisting the urge to actually comment on that because you were flashing it in my face. Shit face.
It's my spirit animal.
It's a bison?
Yeah.
Buffalo? Yeah, kind of is your spirit animal. Speaking of which, yesterday I was taken out by the spider in a workout. We changed up the weights and stuff like that, but we got to the bar. It was like 50 calories on the assault bike, 40 let's call it, maybe a 30-meter overhead walking lunge with a plate, and then 30 squat cleans. I did the overhead walking lunge I did with a 45-pound plate. He did it with a 35. And then on the squat cleans, it was 30 squat cleans. He did 115. I did 135. He caught me on the squat cleans, and then we got to the ring dips, and I blasted through on the ring dips, and then it was just a little different after that. But I was actually pretty surprised about how poorly I cycled the bar. But that being said, my lower back was pretty much blown up on my left side just because of my left my left posterior inlet wasn't getting in the right position, so I really couldn't use my left ass at all. My right ass was lit up, and my left QL was just, roasted and tight. But, something to kind of appreciate. And after the workout, I kind of made a note of that. I'm like, I could probably do some more moderate weight barbell cycling. I've been doing more heavier weight barbells, just like CP battery work, but like being able to cycle the bar in singles is probably something I need to start honing in on now that I'm about, I think at the beginning of this week, I'm 5 weeks out from competition. So I think that's probably an appropriate time where I can start, doing that more, just because you don't want to give up too much of what you could be building in other areas, because there's going to be a lot of soreness and that kind of thing with either high repetition squat cleans or high repetition front squats. And that's something that I'm actually doing more with Ian, and not surprising that he just crushed that area, because he's doing scaled. So, scaled, intermediate, RX, and then to the advanced, to the elite. It calls for different things. If you're doing a scaled competition and you're actually a decent athlete, it's going to be basically freaking hundreds of contractions as fast as you can. So, there's nothing really that's going to slow you down. So he's got to prepare more for that. So I have him doing like 20 front squats at 135 pounds, rest 2 minutes times like 4 sets. So just destroying his legs, because he's just going to need more of that. Whereas I need to kind of integrate a little more skill work into it. So I had to spend a little more time on muscle ups and handstand push-ups and rope climbs and that kind of stuff, because I know that's going to be a little bit more what the intermediate is for the upcoming competition. So but again, like testing, even though like in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm going to crap my pants and I don't want to do this. You have to do it in order for you to kind of see where you're at so you can base your training off of something. Because if not, you're just shooting into the dark. So that brings us to our conversation today, I suppose. Mr. Tyler, what do you want to work on, my man? I know that you kind of coming off of some injuries and you want to get healthy. And what's the deal?
Yeah. So really, what I want to work on, I'm going to take 2 months off, just not using any weights, not loading anything. I saw my PT on Friday, and we were just talking about it, and he was saying, yeah, if you really want to see improvement, eliminate the pain that you're having, allow your system to recover. He's like, I just wouldn't load anything for a couple months. And he's always, I mean, not that he's concerned about my right hip, but he's like, yeah, there's something, if you just keep loading things up and giving your system, not inappropriate, but, the wrong inputs because you're not functioning properly, it's just going to keep just driving your head into the ground and
beating your head against the wall.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is for just 2 months, not load anything, but still maintain some, I want to maintain my conditioning. I want to keep body composition. I want to, I guess, I don't know if improving gymnastically would be maybe just improving the actual like tissue and tendons themselves and just get them strengthened up. I guess it doesn't have to be so much a gymnastic improvement, but more or less just kind of making sure that those I'm hitting the right positions.
Yeah, so I think mechanically you want to be moving efficiently.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So just figuring out ways on how to, all right, I want to work lower body pushing today, but I don't want to use any weight. So like, what are some things we can work on? Or I want to work lower body pulling in a sense, but not do it without any weight, and just kind of figure out ways and make workouts and create workouts that aren't going to leave me in a hole, but are going to be moving forward in a sense.
Yeah, so I would say that these are probably pretty typical responses to somebody. Yeah, is that your scraggly ass beard against the microphone making a noise?
Maybe.
I'm a professional podcaster. You better not. How dare you? How dare you? All right, so you're in a position now where you've been training for probably 4 to 5 years, right? Maybe even longer, 6, 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you've gone through the ringer. You've kind of had some pretty good performances. You were in regionals 2 years ago as a team competitor, and now you're kind of going through the the general cycle of what competing is. And I don't think this has ever been really seen before because CrossFit's such a young sport, but there really has never been a sport where it's going to test you not only physically but also metabolically so much. So it's amazing how much our tissue quality changes, how the mechanics of our body change because of the number of repetitions that we're doing on all like the upper body pulling and lower body push and pull and all that kind of stuff. So like I know for me when I started versus where I am now, like I'm like, damn, like I don't move the same as I did before. Like when I was in high school, I was a high school wrestler, and like I would be able to roll on my head, and my tissue was resilient, my joints are resilient, and now like I fall off a skateboard and I'm like, oh, I like broke my wrist. Like it's just pathetic. So I think one of the things that you need to start doing is start getting outside of the gym a little bit. Things like slacklining, learning how to skateboard, or not even skateboard from the beginning, but like learning how to balance. So like getting on like an indo board, and learning how to reference the floor again, because one of the things that we lose is our as CrossFitters, because we're going through so much extension, is that you lose the contact with the floor, and getting your feet woken back up. Stay woke. You need to be able to balance and actually have some kind of reference to your base of support, which is your feet. So first thing I would do is do a little barefoot walking and slacklining and skateboarding and indo boarding and all that kind of stuff, and trying to balance and trying to get some reference from your feet. And I know that you have plenty of ideas on your end probably to help with that, I imagine, right?
Well, it's winter in New York, so you're not getting outside with a skateboard.
Yeah, but you can do an indo board, or you can make your own indo board. An indo board is basically a foam roller with a piece of wood.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so you can make your own makeshift one with a PVC or whatever. Just you can probably buy one online. They're like a couple $100, less than a couple $100, but they're a very valuable piece of training equipment that a lot of people use. My Laura, my fiance, actually sees Dr. Spencer, and he loves the indo board. He loves training people on it just because it wakes up your feet, gives you reference to the floor, and if you can't feel the floor, you can do all the mechanical work in the world, all the soft tissue work in the world. It's never going to get better because your body is always in a position of, fight or flight. Just imagine how it feels when you get the rug pulled out. Like, have you ever been on a roller coaster before and all of a sudden you go down? Your body has that sympathetic response. And basically, if you can't feel the floor, you're constantly falling. Right? So your body's going to have to try to respond to that, and you always have some kind of sympathetic tone to what you're doing. And that's one of the reasons why when people go to sleep, when they're in this toned position, they don't really sleep nearly as well, just because they're always on. So
Right.
we got to be able to hit the dimmer switch, and one of the main ways to do that for you is learning how to feel the floor again. So just basic crawling, balance work, and those are great activities that you can do in a low aerobic way to kind of supplement your regular aerobic training so that you're able to recover as well.
Right.
So
go
ahead.
So what would you recommend in terms of like a training split, in terms of, I guess, conditioning pieces where I'm still allowing my? Would you even recommend a high intensity workout even anymore, or would you just kind of like moderate conditioning? Or?
So that's a good question. You have to actually address where you're at metabolically, physically, and psychologically as well.
Right.
When we're looking at what you're doing, there's only so much time and effort you can put into what you want to work on, and it matters about what your goal is. So if you're looking for body composition changes, or not changes, but like maintaining body composition, that's not a weight room / energy system thing. That's a what am I putting in my mouth thing.
Right.
So, this might be the time to tinker around with cleaning up your diet, maybe doing some fasting, maybe cleaning things up completely, maybe adding things, maybe taking them away, maybe messing with the timing of your stuff, working supplemental protocols. Is your gut destroyed? If your gut is destroyed, how are you going to tell if it's destroyed and what actually to do? So those are things where you would want to work with a functional medicine doctor. At the very least, get together with an FDN, functional diagnostic nutrition expert, or certified person. They're very, very knowledgeable when it comes to healing the gut and that kind of stuff. So a good place to start would just be with a functional medicine doctor, and I kind of referred one to you as well. That'll get you some baseline blood work, but then from there you would want to get with an FDN and get an MRT, and then see what that goes. And then once the MRT is run through, then kind of seeing how you're responding and that kind of stuff. Because James Fitzgerald says it a lot. Like if you're physiologically smashed, it doesn't matter what training you're doing, you're not going to respond.
Right.
So
makes sense.
just think about what we're doing with PRI. One of the reasons why PRI doesn't stick for people in theory is that like either one of the main sensory awareness systems, whether it's your feet, your eyes, your ears, could be compromised. But if your body is so stressed that you are constantly in this fight or flight state, you might have physiological conditions that prevent you from actually moving your body in a certain way as well. And just anecdotally, you can always tell after you take 3 or 4 days off how much easier it is to kind of get into a squat after you warm up. Like the tissues respond better just because you're not just completely fighting against yourself the entire time.
Right. Yeah.
So you want to try and find the balance between stressing your body, but then also allowing it to recover. So I would shy in general on recovering more and doing lower intensity work right now so that your body can actually catch up and respond.
Right.
So I know you asked like what splits and that kind of stuff. It's going to be a lot by feel. And I know that because we're so regimented in terms of our training, we don't really want to do that because we feel like, well, I don't want to lose gains. I don't want to do this, that. You're going to have to let go of those ideas for now.
Right.
Me personally, like I had a really hard time of not training as much. But like when you look at like professional fighters, when you look at boxers, when you look at other athletes, they take time completely off from training. But because training is like our part of our lives as coaches,
Right.
but it's also like what we do.
Right.
It's like, what am I going to do if I'm not doing that? It's like, well, that's a good question, So that's not obviously for me to answer, but that's more for you to answer. So if you take time off from training, what are some things that you would do?
Right.
You can answer that now if you want. This is a podcast.
I don't know. That's a good question.
So yeah, I mean, you may not have an answer right now, but just off the top of my head. But like, working on your business, working on your brand, working on your coaching, maybe relationship wise, traveling, again, finding balance. I kind of steal this from Joe Rogan, but like the samurai warrior back in the day wasn't just, he would practice sword and fighting and that kind of stuff, but they also did art. They also, had relationships. There was balance because you can't have so much pressure on one thing, because if that thing is taken away from you, now you fall over. So there has to be balance.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of it deals with your identity connected to your training.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I've never seen that with you. I think you have a very good balance relative to what I've experienced myself personally and some of the athletes I've worked with. So I'm not too afraid with that, but it's just something to consider. Also, because I've never walked a mile in your shoes.
Right. Yeah, I think for me, it's just finding something where mentally I got a good workout in, right? Or I feel good, and that feeling of I worked hard, and that's really what I'm aiming for with working out a lot of times.
Yeah. So what does that mean to you, working out hard?
Let's say I'm doing a conditioning piece and I'm doing intervals, and with each interval I'm trying to maintain a specific split, and if I'm able to maintain that split, then I'll take that as a win for the day, something along those lines. Mm-hmm. Or if I'm doing a gymnastic piece, how did my chest to bars feel today? If I'm doing a strength piece, how did this go up? Or just with each training session trying to find little micro wins.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah. So you try to find those external motivations to keep you going, that kind of thing. So one thing I would definitely offer to you is having an intention and less goals. So the intention is actually the what's kind of like you put the boat in the water. That's the intention. So you want to go this way, and maybe that is increasing your performance. But if you have only certain goals in mind, you don't actually have a grander vision of what the possible outcomes might be, because all you're focused on is that one goal. So if you have a training session when you're like, oh, well, this was the goal, but I did also this, and this, I didn't accomplish my goal. Now I'm like, fuck, I didn't do things properly. I didn't get what I wanted out of that. Whereas if you have an intention, you go, wow, I did all these 3 things or 5 things in this training session. I learned about something. I failed at something and I learned about something new. Then it's actually a win. So I think reclassifying what in your purpose of training is important, because at this point you're going to be closing on 30 years old. And the course of your training is going to be dictated a lot going forward by what your intention is. Like right now, you don't have too many more turns to go, especially if your idea is that maybe you want to compete on a competitive level eventually. Maybe it is just like exploring training for the next 30 years. Maybe it's, getting a brand together. I don't know what it might be, but, now we kind of we've done enough seeing what you like and don't like to actually give you some direction in your training.
Right. I think for me, I'm still just confused. All right, it's Monday. I'm going in. What do I do?
Yeah. All right. So that's a great question, because I've had this myself. It's like, all right, so write down what you want to work on.
Right.
Like, what do you want to get better at?
Well, am I even able to get better at what I want to work on?
Don't ask that question. I didn't ask you that question. I said, what do you want to get better at? Because you're thinking about it on this. You can only think about it on the from what you know.
Right.
Just write it down. Let it open up, and let's see what comes out.
Right. Well, I want my squat mechanics to improve.
Okay, so you want to be able to better squat. Okay,
Right.
what else?
Let's see. I want my mid back to be my mid back posture to improve as well.
So better posture.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know if this is still a goal, but to still maintain somewhat of an aerobic base, not completely just go to crap and just be. I don't know if it's a fear of just being lazy. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, there's always a if it's in your consciousness, it means something. Now,
Right.
it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like, okay, that's the answer. I'm afraid of this. Maybe it's just something like there's a doubt. You're like, wait a second, is that true? That's kind
Right.
of the answer. That's always the question you have to ask. Like,
Right.
is what that feels like actually true, or is this something I'm actually just convincing myself of? There is no right or wrong answer. There is no judgment of what that answer might be, but it's just something to consider. You know,
Right.
like, is it fun for you to go in and do row intervals?
It's not fun, but I appreciate the fact that I'm willing to do the work that others aren't doing.
Okay, but what if there's no other competitors to go against?
Then I still figure out a way.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, I challenge you there because you're using a lot of external motivation to get you to do something.
Mm.
You know, like maybe it's not going hard for a little while.
Right.
Maybe that's the answer.
Right.
Maybe you've got to get okay with that. I watched Spider-Man yesterday, the new one.
The one with the British guy playing him. Oh, I guess they both are British.
He's British?
Yeah.
Oh man, you're stealing all our jobs. Dicker. Sorry. Yeah, the Homecoming.
Right.
So he goes, I need that suit. I'm nothing without that suit. He goes, if you're nothing without this suit, that means you can't have it.
Right.
Right. So you could take a page out of Spidey's book, and you can, if this is something that you have to do, why do you have to do it? Why do you have? And trust me, like the biggest fear is who we're not without that stuff, or who we are without that stuff. But again, when you let go of that stuff, and then you say, "Do I really want this, or am I just addicted to the feeling or attached to the feeling?" Then it becomes so much more empowering, because it becomes so much more empowering because you know that you are steering the ship. You're not being steered by it. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
So it's
I
something
think
to
a lot.
consider.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it has to be an addiction to that feeling. For sure.
So, go back to kind of more things that you would want to work on.
All right. Let's see.
So
I mean,
far we
tough.
have better squat, better posture, aerobic conditioning.
Right.
What are some things that you want to do that are fun for you in the gym, or fun for you athletically? Like it may not even be in the gym.
Right.
Like one of the things I always wanted to do is be able to do a backflip.
Right.
Right. Or do a one-arm chin-up, or hold a handstand push-up, or handstand for 60 seconds or something like that. You know what I mean? Those are things that I had almost my entire life that I wanted to do. I was like, you know what? Might as well start now, because it's never going to happen if I don't start.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if those goals entice me as much, like the handstand holds or the things like that.
Yeah, fair enough. But also, again, if you're like, have you ever tried it?
No,
So don't knock it until you try it, right?
that's true. Right.
Again, like I'm not saying, and go in with it, which is an open mind, because again, that might
Right.
reveal something else you might want to do. You're kicking up into a handstand, and you're like, oh, I don't want to do a handstand hold, but I would love to do 10 strict handstand push-ups freestanding.
Right.
Like that might get my jubblies, get on my jubblies.
Right. Ah.
So things to consider. Again, there's no wrong or right answers. You got to have an open mind when it comes to some of the stuff, so that you can actually see what things can offer to you.
Right. But just off the top of my head of things I would want to work on that doesn't pop into my head right away.
Yep. Aerobic conditioning, better squat, and better posture. Okay, cool. So you have 3 things: conditioning, posture, squats. You can work on those things every single day.
Right.
Right? It doesn't have to be hugely intense, but you just have to keep chipping at whatever those things are. And if you want to adapt to it, it has to be in some kind of progressively overloaded fashion, right?
Right.
And progressive overload doesn't necessarily mean more every time, because you might not master it in the first few sessions that you do it. You might need the same program literally every time and then increase the intensity when it doesn't feel challenging anymore. So that's something important, because being mindful of actually what you're doing is what training is all about. So you might have done in the past, all right, we're going to do 5 sets of 3 this week, then we do 6 sets of 2 that following week, then 7 sets of 1, and that's how we progressively get better. It's like, well, how is the quality of those movements when you were doing it? Did you actually get better? So that is more of the focus for you going forward, is like, let's focus on the quality of the work, not just the volume or the intensity of the work.
Right. Right.
And then when you analyze the quality of the work, how do you quantify that, so to speak? And how do you get that better when you're talking about quality? So you're like, oh, I did 30 chest to bar pull-ups. Okay, great. Let's look at it in film. Okay, you're overextending your back. You're throwing your chest at the bar. Is that going to get you to 60 chest to bar pull-ups? No. So let's go back to the beginning. What are we addressing that's preventing you from doing that? Okay, so we have hyperinflation of the rib cage, which prevents good scapular-thoracic congruency. It's not sitting on it properly. Okay, how do we address that? Okay, we do basic breathing exercises. We do scap work. We do, so maybe isolated single arm work. All right, what does that look like? Well, it can look like anything. Are you accomplishing the goal of improving the quality of the movement? So from day to day, week to week, whatever you're doing, it could be fun, it could be different, it could be anything you want it to be, and it allows you in self-discovery, because you're gonna find new stuff when you're not trying to do things that have been done before.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the only time you're actually gonna find like creativity, is when you're not trying to do something that's been done before.
Right. I guess for me, it's also creating a template where I'm just not, dicking around the gym for 2 hours, because I'm very well capable of doing that. It's like, all right, what am I going to work on today?
Well, yeah. So now we know what we're working on: better squats, better posture, aerobic conditioning. So you walk into the gym on Monday and you say, okay, here's what my goals are. I want a better squat, better posture, better conditioning. First thing you have to do is assess everything, because then from there you have something objective. So what are you going to do to assess your squat?
Take a video.
Good. Video your squat. That's day 1. Okay. What about your posture? What are some movements that you can do for your posture, or to assess what because you said mid-back posture, mid-back flexibility or something like that.
Right. I guess just standing, take a video standing up vertically, take a sitting, I guess.
Yep. Can you use any movements that would actually reveal that movement, or reveal the quality of your mid-back flexibility?
Usually it peaks up in anything front squat related.
Okay, so front rack movement. So maybe you just take a kettlebell and put it in a front rack position, or a barbell in a front rack position, or maybe hanging from a bar. There's like a bunch of different stuff that you could probably do, right?
Right.
And then those things become the prescription.
Right.
Right? And you progress those things in a very simplistic, linear fashion. So for instance, if you're like, all right, I want to get a better pull-up because it looks like my pull-up sucks. How do you regress that to the point where you can actually hold good posture and do it? You bring it all the way back to the ring row. And then from the ring row, you can do a weighted or eccentric pull-up. And then from the eccentric pull-up, you can go to a pull-up. And then you go to a weighted pull-up. And then maybe if you wanted to do dynamic stuff, you could do dynamic stuff. But that's 3 months of training right there.
Right.
And do that 2 to 3 times a week, because you want to work on the things that you want to work on a consistent basis. As Dan John says, if it's important, do it every day. If it's not important, don't do it at all. So when you strip away all the other stuff that you need to do, you're left with the stuff that you want to do and that you need to get better at.
Right.
So that's that. And then you have aerobic conditioning. So, what's What's your goal in terms of your aerobic conditioning? You want to maintain, right?
Yeah, maintain.
All right. So in any basic aerobic conditioning, you have long, short, and medium. But right now, you really don't have as much of a impetus or a motivation or need to do high intensity stuff. But you also don't want to completely avoid that completely. So, doing a lot of longer aerobic work is probably good just because it's good for restoration. It's good for overall aerobic development, cardiac output, that kind of stuff. So, around the world, 20 minutes on the Airdyne, maybe a 5K row, and just keep it very easy.
Right.
Because you want to try to reduce the sympathetic tone as much as possible and get yourself into a parasympathetic state, which means that you can actually mold your body a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is being able to accept that.
Yes.
And then that way I could, because we're talking about in the beginning of this, is we want to be able to input proper mechanics. And if
Yes.
I, like you said, if I'm so concerned about, chasing that high of that, feeling like I got a great workout, then that's exactly what is going to be hindering the changes I want to make.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. So what does it sound like? What's like if I said you're going to get out of shape and you won't be able to throw down? How does that sound to you?
Terrifying.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
What does this sound like to you? By the age of 50, you're going to need a hip replacement.
Probably gonna need one right now.
Probably need one right now. Yeah, so I guess, it's just one of those things, and it's scary now because you're holding on to it and you identify with it, right?
Right, exactly.
And great. I love challenges. It's an obstacle. You're going to become more complete of a person when you realize that you don't need that.
Right.
Because you're exactly who you need to be without all that stuff. You are not your performance. You are not that stuff. You're amazing and you're perfect the way you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the only reason I can say that is I had to go through it myself.
Right.
It takes about a week, and they're like, "Oh, can't believe I was even worried about that." And then every once in a while it'll flare up when someone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this competition and shit." I'm like, I never even liked that anyway. It was so agonizing. I was anxious and I freaking painful and whatever. And then you come around to not having that connection anymore to it, and you're like, "Oh, it's just a competition. Oh, I can now make a decision that this is going to be fun."
Right. Not just being anxious and have anxiety based around it.
Yeah, yeah. But you have to be honest and accepting of where you're actually at now in order for you to move forward.
Right.
Because if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same response. So you have to be able to change something in order for you to actually get a change, and you have to stick to it. So aerobic conditioning, my advice would be to do 3 to 4 long aerobic sessions a week. We're talking like 60 minutes. It could be like a 5K row and then 30 minutes of double kettlebell front rack holds, like functional body type stuff, sled drags, pushes, bar hangs, crawling, flow work, 60 minutes of movement, 3 to 4 times a week. And if you challenge yourself in terms of this has to be not just bear crawl to bear crawl, but like, can I do this perfectly?
Right.
That is going to give you that stimulus of like, am I pushing myself?
Right.
In my opinion.
Right.
And then when it comes to the posture and squat stuff, 3 to 4 times a week of like start off single leg stuff, just a split squat, basic as it comes, and pair that up and superset that with maybe a postural exercise. So I'm going to do, I know I have to do this before and after the workout, like my 90-90 hip lift kind of stuff, but I'm also going to integrate that with just split squats, starting off with just body weight, and see if I can actually make the connection of, all right, my rib cage is like this when I'm doing my 90-90. Now I get up and do my split squat. Can I hold the same position? Can I feel my hamstrings and glutes working? Okay, it feels like this when I'm doing it, and that's restricted. Okay, great, because that's going to allow for a better prescription the next time you do it.
Right.
Right. So it's not about finding the perfect prescription. It's about starting somewhere, but having the awareness to know where to go from there.
Right.
But you got to fuck up a few times.
Yeah.
And you got to be okay with that.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the PRI stuff, would you because the PT was saying that unless I address, if I just solely do the PRI stuff, will that ultimately address the right hip? He's not quite sold on it in a sense, but he does think it's valuable. But he kind of made an analogy that it's almost lower on the totem pole. But I think it's just like a disagreement in terms of, is it okay for me to just focus on the PRI stuff for a couple of weeks and get that down and then start implementing that capsule work? Or is it just focus on the PRI stuff?
All right. This is always my issue with people who want to do joint mobilizations. You're taking the parking brakes off of something. There's a reason why your hip is like that. It didn't get that way because you had perfect positions. Right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's because there were crappy positions and something got injured, and then it started making compensations and improper movement patterns.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to say not to do that stuff because, again, I don't know shit. And that person who you're talking to might be a lot smarter than me. But I know from like, my own experience, it never worked for me because we're not talking about the reason you are not able to move isn't because your joint is restricted. The reason you're not moving is because it's not in the right position. So, like, just imagine if you're doing a cars with your hip, right? Yeah, you get great movement in that range of motion, but what if your hip is not in the right place? Now you're doing cars in a position where you're not in the right place. So what are you learning to do? A, you're learning how to actually hold the position that you're not doing correctly. But B, you might be just rubbing right into your freaking, if you do have some kind of lesion or impingement there, let's just keep rubbing against that impingement and keep wearing down cartilage. I know that, some of the FRC stuff is like, obviously we're not trying to hurt ourselves here. It's under controlled ranges of motion and it's under not too much load, but I never had ankle flexibility until I actually addressed my lack of hamstring activation and lack of hip positioning, because your body doesn't want to let go of your calves. Your body doesn't want to let go of your hip capsules because you're saying this is the only thing that's keeping me from falling apart right now. Until I actually put myself in a position where I can shut those off, you ain't going to get more range of motion.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I think there's a time and a place, but right now for you, you need to. I think you need, to really address your hyperinflation of your rib cage and really work on that for a good amount of time, and then readdress all that kind of stuff because, people look at postural restoration from a very tell me what postural restoration is in 3 sentences or less, and they never have an appreciation for it. Like if you can go down the rabbit hole a bit and give it some time, and not like a weekend, you've got to learn it and then you got to practice it. And only then do I ever want to hear somebody talk about postural restoration, because the stuff that they can do in just one session with somebody could be profoundly impactful, and it sticks.
That was his argument, is that it doesn't stick.
I mean, I understand, but we're also um, retraining your brain to hold yourself in a new way.
Right.
Which is why the movements in particular always start supine. Like you got to basically go to being a baby again and then work your way back up.
Right.
So that might be something you would do. Maybe you do a lot of just lying on your back, rolling patterns, dead bugs, bird dogs, all fours patterns. And again, that's integrated into your flow work, like crawling, all that kind of thing. Doing it all barefoot as well, just to kind of get more and more tactile cues from your feet.
Right. Right.
If you don't have slack lines, something like 2x4s, put those down and walk on those. For convenience, because you can just throw a couple of them down and then just kind of walk on them and balance on one foot, and then like just learning how to move a little bit through your feet, because that's Dr. Spence's stuff. He's fantastic with that kind of thing, and I know Laura's had a lot of success with that, but I'm not 100% sold on the FRC stuff. I've done it. I've done a lot of the Pales Rail stuff, and I never had lasting effect from it.
Right.
And I think it could do a lot of harm for people by trying to push ranges of motion that they I know in theory it's like, oh wow, all right, you're contracting and relaxing and you're isometrically getting into those positions. But again, like if your pelvis is in the wrong position and you mobilize your joint capsules, there's no going back. If you've mobilized your joint capsule, especially anterior joint capsule, that's it. You can't restore that. So I want to go as conservatively as possible in the beginning, and then we can address maybe going after capsules, especially in the proper way, because postural restoration does address the posterior hip capsule, but it only can be accessed when the hip is in the proper position, which means that the thoracic diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm have to be lined up to do that.
Right. And that process can take different times for different people?
Yeah, it's just an awareness thing. It just takes time. Like I'm still learning. Dude, I've been doing this. I started first probably doing postural restoration in like, I don't know, February of 2015, maybe 14, right. Whatever. So 3 years. I'm still learning things and I'm not even being taught. I'm just doing it and kind of like going back to the drawing board and then relearning it again. I'm like, yo, I'm not doing this properly. Are you kidding me? And then bang, like, oh, wow, I take a huge step. And then it's kind of just exploration, and then bang, another one. Like that's just the way it is. You forget something and then you integrate it back in. And that's what this is about. It's about finding what works for you. So I'm not going to say not to do that stuff, but I'm going to say from my experience what works and what not.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously my idea was to kind of give it. I've been trying to do it at least 3 times a day. The exercises you gave me.
Yep.
But
well, let me ask you this: like, what have you seen in the last week? Because I know we met a week ago when we did that stuff. Have you seen any improvement?
Yeah, but in conjunction with that, I've also haven't been doing any barbell loading or anything like that.
Well, okay, but what was the first response that you had?
Oh, my back felt better.
Your back felt better.
Right.
What else do you want?
I know.
Okay, now you're not going to be able to do that and be like, all right, time to get in the race car and go now. Like, you got to relearn it all.
Yeah.
This is where it starts. It literally starts with a bodyweight split squat or a bodyweight step up and freaking owning it. Now, I think that there are some principles that you can integrate from FRC, like isometrics and eccentric loading only, and then into the concentric. So, for instance, you stand up on a box and you do a pistol, and you lower yourself down to the eccentric only, and then you step back up using both. I think that's awesome. And now we're working together with the two combinations of philosophies, so to speak.
Right. Was kind of my.
I mean, when I blew out my shoulder, like I started off with isometric, like holds at the top and the bottom, elevator type stuff on a push up, and then I did eccentric only, and then I did eccentric with the concentric, and then I loaded it. Like I did, all that stuff is awesome because what we're trying to do is we're trying to rebuild tissue quality and lay down like matrix basically, but and also increase brain body connection. But I think that's always layered on top of a thick foundation of postural restoration.
Right. Yeah.
So you gotta know what you're gonna do on Monday morning?
No, but
sure
better
don't.
idea. Sure don't.
So yeah, write it down and just write something out. That's the best thing to do. You can do it now if you want, but again, like you don't know how you're gonna feel.
Yeah.
So, but practice. That's what it is. Practice, and then learn. Now you're actually having to learn. You're having to think for yourself when it comes to your training.
Right.
So this is where you become a real coach and a real athlete.
Right. Yeah.
It's scary. Because you don't want to do it wrong.
Right.
But what's right and wrong?
When it's in somebody else's hands, you're a lot more confident. When it's in your own hands, like I'm just gonna fuck this up.
Pretty much. And guess what?
And
you might.
Right. And then I think it also goes like, oh, I'm going back to where we started here. It's like, oh, I wrote this for myself. Am I writing too much? Is there not enough? There's just all that doubt in yourself.
In that regard, I always go back to always leave something on the table. Always leave a little bit. And it's also based upon where you are currently. Do you need to be smashing yourself right now?
No, it's probably the worst thing for me.
So one of the parameters that you can use is I'm going to work out for an hour.
Right.
So there you go.
That's it.
There's your parameter. I need to work out an hour. I want to work on my squat. I want to work on my posture. I'm going to work on aerobic conditioning. There you go. That is enough information for you to write a program for yourself on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not saying that you have to work out for an hour. You might do your aerobic session in the morning. You like get up, fasted, 40 minutes of aerobic work. Then you go to the gym and you do an hour later on because you have time.
Right.
You know, maybe you do some postural restoration work, and then you get like 10 minutes of you do a circuit of step ups, front planks, and then cars working on shoulder mobility or something like that, or hip mobility, and then bang, you do that for 3 different things, and it's an hour of work.
Right.
There you go, done. Move on to the next day, and it's the accumulation of that work over weeks and months that's actually going to change your body.
Right.
And when in doubt, reassess. That's always my always thing. Like when you're like, I have no idea what I want to do or what I should be doing, assess what your goals are and then test them and then make adjustments from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool?
Yeah. Cool. I got a pretty good idea of what I want to do, but
Good.
we just got to sit down and figure it out, flesh it out a little bit.
Well, maybe we'll check in again in a month or so and see where you're at. But in the meantime, I'm Sean LeFloch. You can get me at Sean at CrossFitDelrabeach.com. Tyler, where you at?
You can catch me on Instagram, tflowfitness, T_flow_fitness.
Great. Awesome. Tyler, we'll talk to you in a month or so. Thank you very much for joining the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast.
All right. Over and out.
Over and out. Later.